I'm 80 years old, and yesterday I did something I should have done 60 years ago. I threw away my father's watch. You're probably thinking, what kind of person throws away their father's watch? And you're right to ask, because for 6 decades I carried that watch like a sacred relic. I never wore it. I kept it in a velvet box in my dresser drawer. I took it out maybe twice a year, held it, felt the weight of it, and put it back. And yesterday, standing in my kitchen with my granddaughter asking me why I looked so sad, I finally understood what I'd been doing wrong my entire life. I wasn't honoring my father by keeping that watch. I was hiding from a truth that terrified me. But before I tell you what I realized, I need to tell you about my father. Because his story is probably your story too. You just don't know it yet. My father died when I was 23 years old. Heart attack. He was 47. I was in my second year of law school, and I got the call at 2 a.m. He'd been working late at the factory, again, and collapsed at his desk. By the time they found him, he was already gone. At his funeral, his boss gave a speech about what a dedicated employee he was. 30 years with the company, never missed a day, always stayed late when they needed him. And I remember standing there listening to this stranger talk about my father like he knew him, and thinking, you didn't know him at all. But here's the thing that haunts me. I didn't know him either. My father worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7. When he came home, he was exhausted. He'd eat dinner mostly in silence, watch TV for an hour, and go to bed. On Sundays, his one day off, he'd sleep until noon, then spend the afternoon doing repairs around the house or paying bills. I can count on one hand the number of real conversations we had. I mean real conversations. Not, how was school, or did you finish your homework, but actual, deep, father-son talks about life, about dreams, about who we were as people. We never had them. There was always something more important. He was always too tired. I was always too busy. We were always going to talk later. Later never came. When he died, I inherited his watch, a Timex, nothing fancy. He'd bought it himself when he got his 25-year pin at the factory. I remember him showing it to me, so proud. A man needs a good watch, he said. That might have been the longest conversation we had that year. After he died, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to be like him. I wasn't going to work myself to death. I wasn't going to be too tired to live. I was going to succeed, yes, but I was going to do it right. I was going to have balance. I was going to be present. I'm 80 years old now, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, I broke that promise every single day for the next 57 years. You know what I did? I became exactly like him. Worse, actually, because at least my father worked with his hands, building things, fixing things. I worked in an office, pushing paper, climbing ladders, chasing titles that meant nothing. I had a son, Michael, and when Michael was young, I'd come home from the law firm and he'd run to the door, excited to see me. "Daddy, Daddy, come play." And I'd say, "Not now, buddy. Daddy's tired. Maybe tomorrow." How many times did I say that? 1,000? 5,000? I don't know. I stopped counting. I stopped noticing. The requests eventually stopped coming. I told myself I was different from my father because I made it to Michael's baseball games. Well, some of them. Okay, a few of them. I was there, wasn't I? That's what mattered. I showed up. But here's what nobody tells you about showing up. You can be physically present and emotionally absent at the same time. I'd sit in those bleachers with my briefcase next to me, checking my watch every 10 minutes, thinking about the contract I needed to review, the client I needed to call. Michael would hit a single and look up at the stands to see if I was watching. Half the time I wasn't. My wife Linda used to say, "You're here, but you're not here." I'd get defensive. "I'm at the game, aren't I? What more do you want?" What she wanted was simple. She wanted me to actually watch our son play. She wanted me to be in the moment instead of waiting for it to be over so I could get back to work. I didn't understand. I thought she was being unreasonable. After all, I was providing for my family. I was building a career. I was doing what men do. I was being responsible. I was being my father. Here's the really sick part. When my father died, I was angry at him. Angry that he'd worked so hard for a company that replaced him within a week. Angry that he'd sacrificed everything for a paycheck and a pension he never lived to collect. Angry that I barely knew the man who raised me. And then I did the exact same thing. No, I didn't die at 47. I'm still here at 80. But you know what? I might as well have died at 47 because I stopped living around that age. I just kept breathing. The promotions came, partner at 35, name on the door at 42. I was successful, I was respected, I was miserable, but I didn't know it because I was too busy to notice. Michael grew up, graduated high school. I was at the ceremony. I have pictures to prove it. But I couldn't tell you a single thing about his valedictorian speech because I was drafting an email in my head the entire time. He went to college, got married, had kids of his own, and somewhere along the way, we became polite strangers who saw each other at Thanksgiving and Christmas. We'd make small talk. How's work? How's the weather? How are the kids? Surface level, safe, distant, just like me and my father. Linda died 4 years ago. Cancer. And in her final weeks, when the treatment stopped working and we both knew what was coming, she said something I'll never forget. We were sitting in the hospital room at 3 a.m. She couldn't sleep. I was holding her hand. She looked at me and said, "I feel like I spent 50 years married to a ghost." I tried to protest. I tried to say I'd always been there, but she just squeezed my hand and said, "You were there, honey. You just weren't present. There's a difference." She died 3 days later, and I finally understood what she meant. After Linda passed, the house became unbearable. The silence was deafening. No TV in the background, no sounds of her moving around in the kitchen, no one to talk to at the end of the day, just me and my thoughts. And you know what I realized, sitting alone in that quiet house? I had no idea who I was. I'd spent 60 years being a lawyer, being a provider, being busy, but I'd never spent any time being myself. I didn't have hobbies. I didn't have close friends. I didn't have passions or interests beyond work. I'd built this entire life, this entire identity around being productive and successful. And now that I was retired, now that Linda was gone, now that I had nothing but time, I was empty. I was a resume. I was an obituary. I was a collection of accomplishments that nobody cared about, including me. That's when I started going through old boxes, photos, letters, documents, trying to find myself somewhere in the debris of 8 decades. And I found my father's watch. I sat there holding it, and for the first time in my life, I really looked at it. Not as a symbol or a keepsake, but as an object. A cheap Timex that probably cost $40 in 1970. The crystal was scratched, the leather band was cracked and dried out. It had stopped working decades ago. And I thought, this is what I kept. This is what I preserved. A broken watch from a man I barely knew, who barely knew me, because both of us were too busy working to actually live. I called Michael that night. It was late, but I called anyway. He answered on the 4th ring, concerned. "Dad, is everything okay?" When was the last time I called him just to talk? I couldn't remember. Every call was transactional, birthday, holiday, emergency, never just because. "I need to ask you something," I said, "and I need you to be honest." "Okay. Do you feel like you know me? As a person, I mean. Not as your father, but as a person." There was a long silence. I could hear his kids playing in the background, his life continuing without me just fine. "Dad, I don't think I know how to answer that." "That is the answer," I said. We talked for 2 hours that night, really talked. For the first time since he was maybe 7 years old. And he told me things I never knew. How he used to practice his baseball swing in the backyard, hoping I'd notice and offer to play catch. How he'd wait up when I worked late, just to say goodnight, but I'd always tell him to go to bed. How he stopped trying to connect with me around age 12 because rejection hurt too much. "I thought you didn't like me," he said. "I thought I wasn't interesting enough or important enough to deserve your time." I was crying by then, 80 years old, crying on the phone with my son, realizing I'd done to him exactly what my father did to me, worse, because I knew how it felt. I knew what that absence did to a child, and I did it anyway. I was terrified, I told him. Terrified of being like my father, and I became him anyway. No, I became worse, because he didn't know better. I did. I knew, and I still couldn't stop myself. Michael was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that broke me. "Dad, I'm doing the same thing with my kids." And there it was, the pattern, the curse. 3 generations of men, working ourselves to death, sacrificing presents for paychecks, confusing providing with loving. We made a plan that night. Michael and his family would come visit, not for a holiday or obligation, but just to be together. No agenda, no schedule, just time. They came last week, Friday through Sunday, and you know what we did? Nothing, everything. We played board games, we took walks, we told stories. I taught my grandson how to fish, something I never taught Michael because I was always too busy. Saturday night after the kids went to bed, Michael and I sat on the porch, just like my father and I never did. And he asked me the question I'd been waiting 60 years to hear. Tell me about your life, Dad. Not your career. Your life. What do you wish you'd done differently? I told him everything, about the watch, about his mother's last words, about the baseball games I attended but didn't watch, about the moments I missed while I was chasing moments I thought mattered more. And then I told him what I realized yesterday, the thing that made me throw away that watch. I kept that watch because I thought it honored my father. But it didn't. It was a symbol of everything that went wrong. Every hour that watch didn't tick was an hour my father spent away from me, working for a company that forgot him before they finished his obituary. And every year I kept it was another year I spent repeating his mistakes. I'm not throwing it away to dishonor him. I'm throwing it away because the greatest honor I can give him is to stop the cycle, to finally at 80 years old learn the lesson he never had time to teach me. Michael looked at me. What lesson? That time isn't something you save, it's something you spend. And the only thing worth spending it on is the people you love. Not later, not when you're less busy, not when you retire or when you have more money or when everything is perfect. Now, right now, this moment. This is all we ever have. We sat there in silence for a while. Then Michael said, I'm going to stop working Saturdays. Good, I said, and I'm going to coach my son's soccer team this fall. Even better, and I'm going to call you once a week, just to talk, not about anything important, just to talk. I couldn't speak, I just nodded. Yesterday morning, Michael and his family left. I hugged my grandson goodbye and he said, Thanks for teaching me how to fish, Grandpa. Can we do it again soon? Absolutely, I said, anytime you want. After they drove away, I went inside and took out my father's watch one last time. I held it, really held it, and I said something I should have said 60 years ago. I forgive you, Dad, for not knowing how to be present, for working yourself to death, for all the conversations we never had. I forgive you, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry I blamed you while doing the exact same thing. I'm sorry it took me 80 years to understand. Then I threw it in the trash. Not because I don't love my father, but because I finally do. Because I finally understand that he did the best he could with what he knew. And the best way to honor him isn't to preserve a broken watch. It's to fix what he couldn't. To be present for my son in a way he couldn't be for me. To break the cycle. I'm 80 years old. I don't know how much time I have left. Maybe a year. Maybe 10. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I finally figured out what I should have known at 20, at 30, at 40. The watch doesn't matter. The career doesn't matter. The achievements, the titles, the money, none of it matters. The only thing that matters is right now, this moment, the people you love. Whether you're present with them or just physically near them. If you're reading this and you're younger than me, and you probably are, listen closely. You think you have time. You think you'll be different. You think you'll find balance later, be present later, really live later. You won't. Not unless you make a conscious choice every single day to be different. Your father's watch, whatever form it takes for you, isn't worth keeping. The job that demands your evenings and weekends isn't worth keeping. The busyness that makes you feel important while your life slips away isn't worth keeping. What's worth keeping? The phone calls, the family dinners, the moments when your kid asks you to play and you say yes instead of later. The ability to sit with someone you love and do nothing but be present. I wasted 60 years keeping a broken watch and becoming exactly what I said I'd never become. Don't do what I did. Don't wait until 80 to throw away the things that don't matter and grab onto the things that do. Because here's what nobody tells you. Later doesn't exist. There is no perfect time. There's only now, and now is running out faster than you think. My granddaughter asked me why I looked sad yesterday. You know what I told her? I told her I wasn't sad, I was free. Free from a burden I didn't know I was carrying. free from a pattern I didn't know I could break. And then I asked her if she wanted to play cards. She did. We played for 3 hours. I didn't check my phone once. I didn't think about anything else. I was just there, fully there, for maybe the first time in my entire life. It felt like waking up. I'm 80 years old and I finally understand what it means to be alive. I just wish I hadn't waited so long to figure it out. Don't wait. Please, don't make my mistake. Don't keep the broken watch. Throw it away today. And spend your time on what actually matters, before you run out of time to spend. If this story means something to you, share it with someone you love. Leave a comment and tell me, what's your broken watch? What are you holding on to that's keeping you from being present? I read every single comment. At 80, I've got nothing but time now. Time I finally learned how to use. The question is, will you learn before it's too late? And subscribe if you want to hear the rest of what I have to say. I'm 80. I'm running out of time. And I have a few more uncomfortable truths to share before I go. You might want to hear them.